Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
we're good.
All right, cool.
All right, we're live. Brad, before we get started, I want to go ahead and tell you how I actually found out about your app because it's kind of funny. My neighbor's a big outdoors guy, and he sent me a text one day, and it just popped up, join GoWild. And me and him talk all the time about OnlyFans. And I thought, what in the hell is he sending me? Well,
Yeah, man.
I was half afraid to open it. I showed it to my wife. I said, look what Brian sent me. What is this crap?
Yeah.
And I opened it and I was like, oh, okay, that's nothing. That's just it's an outdoor app. So
Yeah. You're not the first person to call a little bit of harkening back to the 90s of the Girls Gone Wild days. I remember like late at night, I probably shouldn't have been watching Howard Stern, but there's always like commercials for Girls Gone Wild. And a lot of people that remember those days, they're like, oh, Go Wild. I'm like, no, not the first time I've heard that joke, but we're a different group. They're like, oh, okay. Come around to it. It's like, oh, this is awesome. It has guns and fishing and, everything I like.
not saying that one would have been more popular than the other, but
Hey,
that probably would
you
have
know
been a
what?
pretty good model too.
That's right. Yeah, I think I got my my next business already planned. So,
Well, before we get too deep into Go Wild, I want to kind of dig into your background a little bit. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Appalachia, so southeastern Kentucky. I was born in Harlan County, grew up in Bell County, and spent the first 18 years of my life down there. Did not hunt a ton growing up. My dad, and I small game hunted, rabbit hunting, fished a lot, off-roaded a bunch, shotguns a bunch. And, my entire family deer hunted. And funny enough, I went to college, and then in college, you're away, you kind of start longing a little, missing your roots a little bit. And that's when I really got back into squirrel hunting, started doing that with my sister a lot, and started, camping more, hiking more. And then I really wanted to get into deer hunting. I liked everything about it. It was really challenging though. And it was unlike, squirrel hunting or anything I was familiar with. In there's scent and there's time of year that really plays a factor. There's just a lot of things that go into being able to scout deer really well. And when you're new to it and you don't know anything about it, it's a tough thing to conquer. So actually that pursuit of trying to get better at whitetail is what kind of led me to thinking of this idea for this community. It's like, man, how can I not find people to help me suck less? That's all I want is to suck less. I want to be able to connect with people. And I would Google stuff, and, you end up on a forum, you read for 5 minutes, and you're like, well, these are mule deer, not even applicable to Eastern Kentucky. Or, you're reading and you're like, shooting house. Oh, this guy's in Texas. We don't have cactus here. It's like, this is a different scenario. Like there's all these different scenarios that go into effect, man. And, I needed a place that would give me local recommendations, local feedback. And so, through sucking at deer hunting for several years, really had this realization of, I can't be the only person that's experiencing this. It's like, there's got to be other people out there that would like to have a platform like this. But it all goes back to that first question of growing up in southeastern Kentucky, man. One of the second leading, maybe second or third at the time, leading producer of coal. Grew up in coal country, and my family's been there for a long time. One of the few that's left, actually. I live in Louisville now, still in Kentucky, but just on a different end of the state.
I can sympathize with you. I grew up in Southern Ohio, and very, very similar setting. We did all the small game hunting, almost exclusively squirrel, because my grandpa's the guy that took me out. And when he was growing up, they didn't have deer. In Ohio and Kentucky in the, late 20s, early 30s, they were almost gone.
Mm-hmm.
So it took totally a long time to get them built back up.
Yeah, totally different environment than a lot of the game, the way it's rebounded. Now it's a lot of people. I'm 34, and even just in my short life, it's kind of interesting to see conversations change around a lot of things.
Yeah, and Appalachia is another kind of. It's such a weird culture in and of itself that you find that people are real hesitant to change. The guys that are talking about conservation and not polluting and doing the right things for the environment, some of those guys are real reluctant to give some of that stuff up.
Yeah, it goes both ways.
Coal is a much cleaner industry than it used to be, but I'd say back in the day, those guys didn't really care.
Well, I mean, dude, I mean, if you're getting a paycheck, you think a lot of those guys didn't even know. They weren't paid to be environmentalists and know about those things. And my family's got ties back to both of the major coal strikes that came through Appalachia. Bloody Harlan. My family lived through that. I can watch. When I was growing up, I'd watch Harlan County, USA, with my grandfather, and he would, Papa would sit there and tell me like, "Oh, that's your Uncle Clyde with my shotgun." Or I remember being there. I was standing off camera. And nobody was thinking about that stuff because they were just trying to survive. So I think, a lot of that wasn't their responsibility per se, but there are some, and I've had some public debates and arguments over this. Probably most notably an entire article that the Bitter Southerner ran over this very topic that you're talking about. I think there are a lot of people out there. I say a lot there's probably thousands of people out there that are in line with what you just said. And they aren't good examples or good stewards of the lifestyle, and they don't care about conservation, and they don't care about the environment. It's not generally like my take on it. If you want to kind of read more on that article, I think you could Google, why I hunt, Bitter Southerner. It's a really long piece, but I responded to a guy who had nothing good to say about hunters and nothing good to say about the experience that he had with them. And I thought a lot of it was misappropriated. I'm not saying that's what you were doing just now, by the way. I'm just kind of riffing here, but having grown up in that, I do think a lot of that outside perspective of what people are thinking about. I'm like, man, my family that I knew that was hunting, a lot of them, it's you're surviving. It's like you're out there hunting and you're going to eat that animal, and it was just a different concept because it had to be. And I do think there's a lot of room for growth, though. I will agree with you that. I think sometimes I live too much in the weeds to where I'm, very much in tune with like what you're talking about of the conservation efforts. And, I think about that, I'm sure more than most hunters do just from being in the industry and hosting a podcast and all that stuff. But, I mean, I think it's a complex subject to dive into about, why some people don't have that appreciation. Some of them would blatantly ignore it, but I think a lot of people just haven't been brought up to think about it.
The more I think about it, the more I think the issue of the conception of what hunters are. I don't think they give us enough credit, because when it comes to hunting and conservation, we've got a vested interest in making sure these places stay as healthy as possible. Because if they're not healthy, we can't do the things we love. We get this really weird thing like, oh, we're just stupid hunters that go out and just shoot stuff for fun, and we'd like to kill things. I guess I'll go and speak for you. That's not what we do.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I've had a lot of conversations around that exact point. And there's more people out there that are enjoying the outdoors than hunters, but hunters and shooters are paying for everybody else's rite of passage. That's what doesn't get acknowledged. I for one, from what I understand of how it would work, I'd be in support of a backpack tax. You're buying outdoor gear, you should be taxed on that for creating funds that are going to help the outdoors overall, just like hunters do. Some people may say like, "Whoa, Brad, what are you talking about?" And they may not even realize that as hunters, where that game tag is going into, you're paying for wildlife biologists who are monitoring those animals, who are setting your quotas, who are making sure that we don't overtake. Because if you don't know your history lessons, you can go back to the Daniel Boone era that everybody likes to glorify, but the Indians tried to tell them, not just Daniel Boone, but that generation, you guys are overtaking. The land cannot sustain this. And guess what? They were right? Like, because we didn't manage that. So now we have this model, and it's the best model for conservation in the world. And it's working really well for the most part. For most species, it's working well. But we got to pay into that. But we're the only ones that do. Now shooters, shooting has taken off, especially over the last 18 months. I think we're all familiar with that. If you try to buy any ammo in the last 18 months, it's hard to find.
Oh, for sure.
But by and large, they've actually overtaken hunters and anglers with Pittman Robertson or with the Dingle Johnson. They've overtaken the funding, but still, we're paying more than our share. Like, we really need some, in my opinion, there needs to be some buy-in from other people, the kayakers and the backpackers who, and it's funny because you'll see these companies that are in that side of the outdoors, and they're hyper outspoken about conservation. But when it comes on these backpack taxes that come up, they say, oh, we shouldn't have to do that. Really quickly it gets like, well, we're not that into it.
So I moved to Colorado a couple years ago, and when I first moved here, the state wildlife areas, you could use them for free. You didn't have to have any license. There was no buy-in for them. Last last year they introduced a new thing where you have to have either a valid hunting license or a valid fishing license to use those state wildlife areas. And people freaked out. They didn't understand that it takes money to maintain these places, and they don't have any buy-in in it.
It's the exact same thing as what you just said a second ago about the hunters, though. It's like a lot of them haven't taken the time to think about it. How many people go out and hike and they might stumble into deer or turkey and they don't appreciate what brought that animal back and appreciate the management that goes into monitoring, the everything, from every aspect of that animal's life, from the take all the way into it's Kentucky did a survey a few years ago trying to get hunters to talk throughout the year of how many turkeys they were seeing. They're trying to record turkey populations, and all that takes money, man. It's a lot of money to have these teams, and sadly, a lot of these state agencies are severely underfunded. So I'm a big fan of getting people to buy in on some kind of license, and it wouldn't even be a bad idea, in my opinion, to have a third license that's an outdoor license where you can do mountain biking and whatever, and they pay the same amount, and it makes them feel like they're not having to buy a hunting license to be able to go biking or whatever it is.
Yeah, I've been having a lot of conversations about that very thing, because here in Colorado, there's a lot of multi-use trails. So there are mountain bikers that are using the same trails as hikers, that are using the same trails as hunters. And there's some conflict there every once in a while. As a hunter, you're carrying a firearm or a bow through the woods, and you might come across someone who's against what you're doing, but they're reaping the benefits of what we're paying into.
Yep.
And they don't really understand that. And that's where I think a thing like GoWild is really beneficial, because I guess we're going to start talking about the app, how it came to be, but it's not just a hunting and fishing app. It's like an outdoors app.
Yeah.
So what brought the idea along? When did it start?
Actually, this week marks the 5-year anniversary of the idea. Now, we didn't launch the app 5 years ago, but it started with what I was talking about. I was in a field scouting for deer in eastern Kentucky, back in Bell County. It's the most southeastern tip of the state, right in the Cumberland Gap where Daniel Boone came through, so many generations ago. And I really had, there's two things that happened. I kind of mentioned the first was I was having a hard time learning from people online. And my dad wasn't a deer hunter. My dad hunted his whole life, but it was mostly small game. So I didn't have a good resource to learn from, and I wanted to. And there was that thought that had already kind of been lingering there. Like, oh my God, are these, 2001 era forums the only way I could do this in 2016? And then the other thing was the aspect, and this ties in a little bit of what you're saying, realizing that there's an audience that doesn't want my content. They don't want to see my dead deer. They don't want to hear these conversations. And I had the thought of, if I shoot a deer this year, am I even going to post it on Facebook? And the recognition of that made me kind of embarrassed to have had that thought, of something that like I'm so proud of. It's going to be such a big moment for me. And to wonder, like, is this okay? Like, that was a shameful moment for me. And I decided, like, at that moment, like, that's what it is. And I'd kind of been looking for a business to do. I wanted to do something besides what I was doing, and had been exploring options. And I was like, I wonder if that could work. Like, I wonder if you could make a platform that people could interact with around what they want to do. So started researching the hunting and fishing industry to see if it could sustain something like this, and was mind blown. I had no idea how much hunters and anglers spent, because I'd always just been one, right? Like, I didn't think about it as an industry. I was just there. And I think most people are on that side of, very much in line with what we talked about for the first 8 minutes of this podcast, very much in line with just being there. It's something they like. They don't think about the economics of supply chains and demand and markets and all that stuff. Once I figured that out, though, I really, decided I want to go all in on this thing. And I found 3 guys who, over the next 3 months, so started putting together a team in September of 2016. By December, we had the 4th co-founder. There was 4 of us that really bootstrap built this thing. We started this with $500 and our nights and weekends, really, meeting on holidays and working through my basement over pizza and beer and, talking through what we wanted it to be and what we didn't want it to be. And the one of the main premises of GoWild is that you don't need followers. Every other social media platform on the planet has this premise of needing followers and growing your followers. And it's honestly useless, man. Like, I mean, influencers like it because they can go sell sponsorships to brands, and that's a whole other angle. And it's one that's successful in a lot of ways and making a lot of brands and influencers money. But for the common person like me at the time of, I just want to learn, like, I don't have a lot of followers on Instagram who can help me become a better deer hunter, right? Like, most people are also only going to reach about 10 to 30% of their audience at any given time. So we built this more like Reddit. Reddit's the only platform I know of that's similar to what we do. And if you're not familiar with Reddit, it's forum based. So we built a forum based social media platform. So if you're hyper into deer hunting, dude, you go into Deer Hunting Trail and GoWild, which is a forum. You can connect with all kinds of people posting about deer hunting. You're going to hit tens of thousands of people who are just as obsessed with this as you are for that specific topic. Even better, once you're in deer hunting, you can hit that little radar blip at the top right of the screen on your app. And now you're looking at deer hunting in your state or within 200 miles of you. So it's gotten hyper local now. You're taking out that whole Texas problem I was having, the mule deer problem. We're going to hyper focus you in on people who are not only, near you, they're experiencing the same rut as you. They're experiencing all the same weather conditions as you. They're hunting the same food as you. They understand, the tree lines, like all of these things that go into hunting something specifically to your region. We've accounted for that. And to me, like that was the most important thing, was to help build a place where people could learn. And, we've had struggles as a business to figure out how this was going to work. Like any new business, we started off really thinking that, we go all in on advertising. Brands are going to want to be a part of this. We'll grow it really big, and then every brand will come along. And we've had some success with that. We've had some challenges with that. A lot of that came up last year in 2020 with a lot of different things, but essentially the outdoors popped. Brands didn't want anything to do with advertising last year because they didn't have product to sell. Who wants to put ads up when you don't have product to sell, right? That's a great way to piss off a lot of customers. So, over time we've evolved, and really the thing we've kind of figured out about ourselves and our community, the community wants gear, and the community, like, that's a natural part of what we do. Now, I'm not saying you have to have really expensive gear. That's not what I said. I am saying though, that no matter what you do, if you hunt, you need a gun or you need a bow, right? Like that. And now you're wondering whether it's around budget or performance or some other factor, maybe it's size, how light it is. You're going to naturally want to ask people what they're using. You want to learn about that, right? I can do the same thing in fishing, right? Like, you want a spin caster, you want a bait caster. Okay, you want a bait caster. Okay, well what kind of line are you going to fish? What's the most successful lures for that fish in your area? All these questions were becoming really prevalent on the platform. So where we've landed with this is recognizing that we're a gear discussion platform. We're an experience sharing platform. And through all of that, really the best way forward as a business was to help people shop for that gear that we find that's popular. So, if you log onto the app today, there are, you'll be able to buy gear through the platform. We don't shove it down your throat. If you hit the trail mix, you may not even see gear for a while. But what's cool and what's really important to me, if you buy stuff on Amazon, you get to help send Jeff Bezos into space with his equity that he earned from Amazon, right? He went off and started a spaceship company, and he's flying to space with your money. With us, we're nowhere near Amazon level, but really important to us is getting to donate back into the outdoors, which is something that you're not going to get with a lot of other outdoor retailers. So we're actually donating 1% of our profits into a camp called Raise 'em Outdoors. They're teaching kids to hunt, fish, hike, and camp. I'm on the board of this organization. It's a really important organization to me, and I'm good friends with the founder, Aaron Crooks, and together with good funding from brands like ours and other brands that are involved, we get to help hundreds of kids and their parents every year learn how to do something outside. And we're trying to grow the platform, which takes funding. So that's why we're so committed to that. But to recap everything I just said, you kind of ask, what is it? It's a social platform where you can discuss gear. And when you buy that gear, you're going to feel really good about it.
All right. I've got a lot of notes here. I'm going to start with with the first one I can think of. What I appreciate about GoWild is that when you look at a mainstream social media platform, let's say Instagram, the generally speaking, the people that are in charge of moderating content and designing algorithms and such tend to have a negative view of hunting, in particular, and guns. I've experienced this personally. I can post a post about a firearm, me going out and target practicing. There's a marked difference between the exposure of my posts before that gun and after that gun.
Yeah.
It seems like those things get flagged and then your accounts get throttled. People don't see your content.
Yeah, that happens.
And I think that's a real issue.
Yeah, here's I don't know if you can see this. Can you see that? This
Yeah.
is a screenshot from Instagram. We just found this yesterday, I think. So it's a hashtag gunsmith and no results found for gunsmith. Do you think that was true a few weeks ago?
No.
You think no one on Instagram's ever tagged gunsmithing? No, it's absolutely silly, right? Here's our platform. I'll show people. So there you go. How many people can you see there following that trail?
118,000.
So you can connect. Yeah. So not only do we now have more official gunsmithing content than Instagram that you can find, you can tap into it quickly, right? So to your point, man, like, and I'm going through this, dude. LinkedIn blocked a post that I had yesterday. I used the word facetious, and apparently that was too offensive. So I posted it twice. And it didn't. I was like, "What is going on?" Nope. Like, it was about the celebrating a milestone for our company, and it wasn't negative or anything. And I was trying to figure out what it was. So I sent it to a team member, and he's like, "Dude, I can't even see that post. It says you hit it." I was like, "I didn't hide it." I reposted it. Same thing. I was like, what in the world? And I've had this experience on LinkedIn before, and I like LinkedIn. It's only the other platform I consistently use besides GoWild. I was reading it and I was like, I don't know, man. I'm just going to take out facetious and see what happens. It feels like maybe that I'm getting flagged as being a jerk. So I changed it to silly. Boom. Start getting comments.
No way.
Swear to God. I reposted it, deleted only that one word. Everything else is the same. And I had that happen on a post. I interviewed Tim Kennedy on my show Gearbox Talk, and it was around Veterans Day. And I posted
that guy, by the way.
Very cool. Yeah, super knowledgeable. Kind of freaks me out how he could probably kill you with like immediately with anything in reach. Awesome guy though, was super nice and he did 3 shows with me in one sitting. Super nice. But one of the shows we released on Veterans Day, and I posted about it on LinkedIn. And it was the same thing, man. It's like no views. You know, it's like you can see how many views you're getting on stuff. It was like 12. You know, normally in half an hour, I've got 500, 1,000 views. And I was like, what is going on? Well, I had hashtag USA on there. I was like, I wonder if that's it. I took out hashtag USA. That post went on to go viral. I had some crazy amount of like 100,000 views on that post. I took this off 2 days later. So per the algorithm, that post should have been on the downhill, right? Because content ages, becomes less relevant, right? That's how all algorithms work. It's called a time decay. This was 2 days later, and all of a sudden, I had like 600 likes on this thing. It literally reached, I think, 100,000 people, and it's because I took out hashtag USA. It's the only thing I did differently. So if you don't think these things are happening, you're wrong, and you just haven't posted enough and experimented enough to not to notice it. What I find is, generally, like my Instagram account, which is private now, don't even try. I don't even post there. I don't care. And not that anybody's like dying to follow me on Instagram, but like, I just don't care about that platform anymore. It's dead to me. But like, I don't have enough followers where I'd really notice getting throttled like that. But the GoWild account or accounts that have like 50 to 100,000, you can tell, man. I mean, like when you post something and it's got 13 likes after 3 days, you know, you got throttled when you're averaging a few hundred on any other, you know. It's like I don't know how they're doing that. I know there are really simple ways. It can be as something as like the word facetious will not be in our newsfeed. Swap out facetious with hashtag USA or guns or whatever it is. I don't say the words hunting, gun, firearm on LinkedIn because I will not get reach. I know I won't. I've had it happen too many times. And this is the same on any platform, man. And they're all, it's interesting because they're trying to make it more palatable in some ways for everybody. But the way to do that is to basically like whitewash everything with some version of right. And here's the problem. Even if you're doing that everybody's like, well, we don't do humans don't decide this. Like, okay, but a human built the algorithm. That's the thing that they don't talk about, is like someone decided what that algorithm is going to weigh as being valuable. and what's good and wholesome for us to talk about. That you can't argue with that. Like that's what's happening. So yeah, man, we're trying to avoid that as much as possible. I mean, we in general, stuff rides. You post on our platform, and anybody that's following that trail could see it. So we're trying to counteract this stuff.
To me, the real problem is whenever you start canceling out content like that, you're really eliminating the chance for dialogue. Because
Yep.
I think a lot
Echo
of people
chambers.
can learn from each other. As hunters, we've got a lot of knowledge to share, and we'd like to see more people come into the realm. But whenever you throttle our content, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, and I've had people say, "Well, aren't you just creating an echo chamber on GoWild?" And it's like, yeah, you can say that if you want to, but also, where else are you going to have these discussions? That's the point. The point is not like I'm trying to create an echo chamber. Actually, what we've seen on our platform, anecdotally, I can't really prove this. No amount of data would. I guess you could see what people are following over time, but we haven't gone into this level. Generally, we see people come in and they'll follow fishing. One guy in particular, Ricky, who I've got to know over the years on our platform. He was super into bass fishing. I mean, this dude lived for bass fishing, but he also started following people, and he's like, "Oh, archery looks cool." He bought a bow, and he's like, "Oh, people are hunting. That looks cool." And he kind of it's like you're on the fringe of these things, anyways. So you could say we're creating an echo chamber, or we're finally giving people a chance to connect, because no one else really does that. Maybe you follow Remy Warren, Remy posts, and you can connect with other people that like Remy Warren on comment threads of his pictures. But that's not really a community. And at the same time, like we just said, stuff gets throttled. We're not in control of what's really in reach there. So, we're trying to make it a platform that's open, that lets people connect with who they want to connect with and around what they want to connect about.
And you back to your comment about donating proceeds to raise them outdoors and getting younger people involved in the outdoors. Do you feel like technology is the way to do that now? Like, is that going to be how it happens? How we get more people involved?
I think it's a component. I don't think there's any one answer to growing hunting and fishing. Fishing was already doing pretty well, but the industry had fears that maybe it was going to grow and then kind of start to slow down when the boomer age started to age out of it. The baby boomers start to age out. They're not fishing as much. What's going to happen when we have like a third of them kind of stop fishing all at once? Hunting was already, for the most part, in decline. Like, yeah, we grew a little bit in 2016. There were some rumors, like I had heard through different channels that like 2018 was a pretty good year for hunting. Nothing compares to what we saw last year. We added 10 to 15% last year. So that it works out to about 1.5 million to 2 million people that started or came back to hunting last year, which is great. I think technology, where this comes in and what we really and truly see ourselves filling a void in here in Louisville. My local archery shop just closed last year. And this is a trend across the country. You're seeing a lot of these mom and pop shops, gun shops, fishing shops are doing okay. But I mean, in general, a lot of these local resources are going away. And then you have big box stores, but, hit or miss on if you can find anybody that knows what the hell they're talking about. I walked into one of the big box stores here near our office a few years ago, and I said, "Where are your arrow rests?" I'm in the archery section. And he's like, "What? I don't think we sell those." I was like, "Dude, we're in the archery section." And he didn't know what that was. So you run into that. Now, on the flip side of that, I was at Cabela's the other day, and the guy at the gun counter had 30 years of experience and knew more than, most people I talked to in a year. You can get lucky. I'm not bashing all big box stores, but I think we've all had, if you've been in them enough, you run into some people who are just sales clerks, right? They're not experts per se. What we're trying to do with technology and bringing people into this is, I've had some people say like, we don't need another app that keeps us from getting outside. I'm like, not at all what I'm trying to do, man. What I'm trying to do is fill that knowledge void that's there, make people feel comfortable enough to take that first step to get outside. Because, the hunting industry for years in particular has done a really good job of making this seem really hard. Like, some of these campaigns, it's like, if you want to go hunting, you got to hike 20 miles and be able to pack out 100 pounds on your back, and you got to have this camo, and it's got to be performance, and it's going to cost you $4,000. Like, whoa, it's totally fine to go to Walmart and buy cotton bibs and try it out. Like, you don't have to do all that stuff. Like, I appreciate people that, portray that that storyline that they do it that way, but I also think there's a downside to getting people into it that may feel like, man, I'm never going to be able to do that, right? Like I'm never going to be able to perform at that level. And we're seeing brands that are doing a good job. This is where it's complex, right? Like I think technology like ours can make that information really accessible. You can tap into other people who aren't influencers and paid by these big expensive camo companies and who are just going to keep it real with you. It's like, yeah, man, go to Academy and buy some cheap camo, whatever it is. We're trying to work with affordable camo companies. If you look on our platform right now, it's like I can get you outfitted for, a couple $100, maybe less. We're really focused on trying to do that too. Wherever you want to go though, like I will have, if you got a Walmart near you and that's what you want to do, go buy it there. Like just get something affordable. But there are brands who are premium brands, like First Light's done a great job of this over the last couple of years of building in educational content to introduce to someone to something like, rabbit hunting or whatever it is. And just using the brand's platform as an educational resource and hoping that as that person gets into it, maybe they'll buy First Light one day. I think that we're seeing a lot of brands that are taking that approach. I call them out because, we used to work with those guys and I've been really impressed with their brand over time with how they've built their educational content. There's a lot of great brands that are doing it that way. I think Vortex does a good job of it as well, of having content that makes things feel accessible. But it takes an effort from every company. GoWild's not going to solve this problem. This is not something we can solve. It's going to take everybody trying to lower that barrier of education to get people feeling comfortable. Our fish and wildlife agencies are doing a really good job of this. People like Hank Forrester with his From Field to Fork program of going to the farmers markets where maybe an audience who is really interested in sustainability, but you would think would be opposed to hunting is there. And then Hank shows up and shows them how good venison is. And they're like, you know what? I would like to try that. Hank's changing this industry a couple hundred people a year with that kind of approach. But then they go tell friends. And then, that to me, like it's a group effort. It's got to take people like Hank. It takes companies like First Light and Vortex. It takes companies like us. It takes companies like the Bass Pros and the Walmarts of the world. Like we really need everybody kind of bought in on this mentality of bringing more people along instead of closing it off. This is my spot. This is really expensive. You have to be able to do this at this level. Like there's a pretty big difference in those two approaches.
Well, and it's a big issue with online platforms. It's so easy to be a very negative and toxic person online.
Yep.
As well as I do. If you post a picture, especially me in Colorado, if you post a picture of a trout and it has at least a little bit of dirt on it, or if your hands aren't wet, or if it's in the water, people are thrashing you about how you're improperly handling a fish.
Yeah, man. I talk to people that they're like, oh man, yeah, it must be really hard on the hunting side. It's like, hey, don't leave fishing out of this harassment either, because they're doing it to each other. The salt on the flip of that, the salt side is getting attacked by animal rights activists now. We're seeing a lot of, I know people, the guys at Salt Strong, they have a great community of their own. They're having content taken down out of their Facebook page. They post it in a private group and it disappears because something either in the algorithm, they're either scanning the picture with AI and taking it out because of blood, or somehow it's getting reported or something like that. But it just vanishes, and it's fishing. It's happened across both, man, hunting and fishing.
Yeah. And so getting information, when you first started, you wanted to build this community of people that would share information and help each other out as outdoors people. Do you find that's happening now, or do you still see like those close guarded secrets of people not really being open with information?
So for the most part on our platform, people are open to a point. I mean, I'm not going to tell you where I hunt. I mean, like I hunt private land. That'd be silly, right? Like there's a point where you can't expect people to do that. What I do expect people to do is not like, if I hunted Eastern Kentucky and somebody asked me for help to go hunting for the first time, now I'll tell you where my public spots are, like to a point, right? Like, hey, here's a trailhead you could hit. And, there's whatever it is, 5,000 acres in this particular part of this WMA, or 50,000 or whatever it is that you could go and explore. It's a great place to get started. So many people are just closed off on this. And I see this not in our platform as much, but I think like once you get over this barrier and start to think like, I'm not going to give you my GPS unit to like where I hunt specifically, and my 3 tree stands are set up right now. Nobody would do that, really, right? Like it's private land.
Right.
But if I can get somebody in with information, or at least tell them like, hey, I looked on Kentucky Fish and Wildlife's website. Here's 3 WMAs that are close to you, and I've heard good things about this one. Like those are the kind of things that people need to do more. We see that in our platform. I've seen that even locally. I told you we have a near me feature. So I saw a guy last deer season who was trying to figure out where to try archery hunting. And one of our local guys here in Louisville actually coached this guy into, he's like, hey man, I've never hunted Taylorsville WMA, but I hear good things. It is going to be a little more traffic come closer to, the rut. But if you get in there early, I think you'd have a good experience. And Derek, didn't have any ties to that property, but he helped somebody with local knowledge to get them over that hump. We see more of that mentality within our platform. For the most part, our research indicates access is not the barrier that people think it is. We did a big study on this at the end of 2019, and the conclusion was that really time and knowledge are bigger barriers than access. People seem to, it's not like it's not a problem, but it was like 3 or 4 on the list versus, being for years, the industries and the agencies said access is the number one problem. And now you have a lot of startups that are catering to access issues. There's a lot of different companies that are trying to solve for that. And I do think that that's worthwhile. A lot of people just want to show up just like an Airbnb, give me my credit card. Here's my hunting spot for the day. Right. I think that's great. My opinion, knowledge is the barrier, and helping people do this efficiently with knowledge is the second or first barrier. Those 2 things are really like by far more damning and more of a barrier to keep people from trying hunting for the first time is they just don't know how to do it, and like me with whitetail, if you go out and you have a bad experience and it sucks, it's like, well, I don't really want to do that again. But if you can get on our platform, and a lot of people, this is how people are generally operating. Somebody posts that they had a hard day, this, and this. It's like, hey, next time when the wind is like that, stay put and don't leave because the turkeys start. I'm just making this up, just some scenario. Like, don't run because a lot of times the deer are moving or the turkeys are moving and you didn't think they were, right? Like that's the kind of stuff we see in our platform, and I'm really proud to see in our platform. That's what we're proud to see. You're just never going to get somebody to be like, yeah, here's my GPS for where I go in, my trailhead and all that stuff. But like, we do have a mentality of like, this is a good spot to go. This is where go this direction, and they'll counsel you and they'll mentor you.
I can personally attest to the knowledge being intimidating thing, because when I moved from Southern Ohio to here, the amount of public land that was available to me to hunt, heck, quadrupled. I don't know how much public land's in Ohio, but it's not nearly as much here.
Right.
And the sheer volume of places for me to go left me with this feeling of, oh crap, what do I do now? Yep. And then on top of that, learning a whole new draw system. In Ohio, I could just buy a license and a tag and I'm good. Yeah. Here, no sir, it's way different.
It's way more complicated.
Yeah, and that can be scary to someone who maybe has zero experience with hunting.
Yep.
This would be a very intimidating place to start.
Yep.
What's your advice to someone in that scenario where they're just in this very complex place to hunt? What's the first thing they should do?
So I do think our platform can help with that. I'm not going to only recommend our platform though here. So I'll start with our platform though. If you're into elk hunting, whatever you're trying to do, get on their platform and talk to people. Because even if they don't live near you, a lot of these people, my buddy Mike up in Michigan knows a lot of these Western states tag systems. He knows the units. He helped coach me through this recently with Colorado. And I didn't know anything about this. Because like you said, Kentucky's the same thing as Ohio, man. It's like, I got a buck tag or I didn't, right? Like I either bought a hunting license and it came with it or I didn't. Now we have an elk draw, but it's a lottery. It's totally different. It's totally different environment. I had never dealt with that. So there's people like Mike who you can tap into, get great advice for free. There are resources out there. Go Hunt is a great one. And from what I understand, I know a couple of those guys, and they have a wealth of information and team that can help you with those kind of decisions. There are podcasts. My buddy Cody Rich, who has a podcast called The Rich Outdoors Show, or The Rich Outdoors, and Cody's show dives deep into tag strategy. I don't know that anybody ever has touched the levels at which Cody will go. And he brings, I think the Go Hunt team's been on there a bunch. I would definitely browse through Cody's 500 some episodes or whatever he's up to now and find, he's probably even got for your state and the species. Like he hits this so hard. Now, some of this Cody and Go Hunt are paid. You know, Cody has free episodes, but he also has a lot of Patreon episodes. I don't know how Cody breaks that out anymore. Funny enough, I do like 4 podcasts a month, but I don't really listen to podcasts. I don't know if I'm like burned out on it and got PTSD or what. So I don't mean to recommend something I don't like. I used to listen to Cody's show a lot, but either way, if Cody's Patreon is whatever a month, like I would do it. You know, I've listened to so many of his shows, and that guy is so knowledgeable and he's so well respected within the industry. A lot of people know him. I would start there. I would go with Go Hunt. And then, you know, depending on the species that you're after, there's a lot of other great shows that probably specifically focus on that. The other thing, like one cool product for like elk hunting, there's a app called Elk Nut, and my buddy Taylor owns that. I think it's called Elk Nut. It's by the Elk Nut, and the company has Got Game Technologies, and I'm going to Google this while I'm talking here because I really want to make sure I point you guys to the right app. Got Game, yeah, Elk Nut app. So I use their turkey app. I don't hunt elk. I haven't gotten to yet. Anyways, as I mentioned, it's a tough draw here in Kentucky, and I need to get out west and do it. But they've got a really great turkey app. They did their turkey app with Scott Ellis. So it's got Scott calling, and you can listen. Looks like they got a whitetail and duck app now too. So you can listen to Scott and hear Scott do it, and then you can hear the bird do it. So you start to learn, you know, what those sounds are, when to do those, and it will make you a better caller. They do the same thing across these other species. Paul, I can't remember how to say Paul's last name. Paul Metal. I've heard him on a lot of podcasts. He's a character. He's a great guy, from what I can tell. And the Elk Nut app, same thing. You know, there's a challenge bugle by Elk Nut. You can hit play, you can put it on loop, and you can practice with it. The Real Bull challenge bugle. You know, and you're going through and hearing what the call sounds like and how that differentiates from the actual animal. I cannot overstate how helpful that is if you're new, because a lot of people, man, like turkeys, for example, they get out there and they sit all day, and every 7 minutes it's yep, 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 yep. You know, it's like, okay, dude, turkeys don't just do that every 7 minutes all day long, right? There's correspondence that happens here. There's fly downs. There's times when they're quiet. There's times when they're still active. You know, but newbies, you know, don't spend enough time learning that part of it too. And so I definitely recommend checking out Got Game Technologies, depending on what you're interested in. Check out Cody Rich, check out Go Hunt, check out GoWild.
I don't know how you feel about the Kentucky, like the DNR people, but out here in Colorado, the CPW officials and the rangers and the literature that organization puts out is very helpful. I mean, Colorado even has an interactive map that will show summer and wintering spots, travel corridors for all the various species. That's where I really started narrowing down like my deer hunting spots.
Yep.
So I'd get on there and I'd see where they generally hung out in the wintertime, in the fall, and the summer, and I was able to narrow down my spots that way. Does Kentucky have any kind of interactive maps like that?
I'm trying to think. Funny enough, like I haven't looked at a lot of them because I kind of know where I like to hunt, and I haven't been on there in the last few years. The last time I was on there, I was hunting a WMA down in southeastern Kentucky, one of the smaller ones. There's a lot of public land down in southeastern Kentucky, and I was trying to find how one tied into the other on this hike and trail. That's the last time I've been on there, so I don't know if they do. What I'll say is most people have no idea the wealth of resources their state has. I mean, most of these states have teams of marketing people now that create this content, and you'll probably, if you haven't looked, you'll probably be surprised, just like I probably would be if I showed up and looked at what Kentucky does have available. I do know some of the Kentucky Fish and Wildlife guys, they all work really hard. They stay really busy. They don't make enough money. They're underpaid, overworked, and you know, I am very I would, even if they had a crap system, I wouldn't talk bad about them. I feel like our agencies are, you know, at the core of our conservation model, and they don't get enough credit for what they do. But I will say Kentucky has a good amount of content. They have a great Kentucky has a great program that other DNRs are trying to replicate across the country, the Kentucky Wild program, which goes into that backpack tax we were talking about. It's a way that you can be a member of something, you pay in, and I think my membership just lapsed. I've done it the last couple of years though, and you get a T-shirt or a bandana or something, and they send you emails once a month. They got challenges for your kids. It doesn't talk about hunting and fishing at all. It talks about butterfly migrations and songbirds, and but these are all things that are tied in. Habitat is habitat. The National Wild Turkey Federation doesn't just build habitat for turkeys, because great habitat for turkeys is also great habitats for other animals in those regions, region specific, but they come in and they build great habitat. And so, all these state agencies are working hard towards that. And I'm sure if anybody digs into theirs, they'll be particularly surprised at just how much is there.
With the rise of technology and people like yourself making apps and trying to get more people outdoors, do you think the future of hunting and angling is looking pretty good?
I think the future of fishing is doing pretty well. Things that concern me overall is, once land gets developed, it's never going to be habitat again. I've watched this where I live here. What was previously great deer habitat with cornfields and woodlines is now being developed into like condos and car dealerships and hospitals. And that kind of keeps me up at night, is wondering how far modernity's reaches are going to go. I went to Montana a couple times this year, and it's inspiring to see land so untouched. But I just wonder how long until we screw it up. Truthfully, like those are the kind of things I worry about the most, is just in general, put hunting and fishing aside. I don't think enough regulation or thought goes into what a new condo is going to do for habit or for migration for different animals, or why is it our ducks all of a sudden are starting the populations are in question? Our turkeys may be in decline. Something seems to be off there. When you start a lot of our fisheries, the size fish they're pulling out, the records every season are half of what they were 20 years ago. We're obviously doing something wrong, and I don't know that it's we hunters and anglers. It could be just these progressions of man, right? Like that kind of stuff I don't talk about a whole lot, but these are the things when I'm driving through areas and you see developments coming in, and some developers come in and bought $4 million worth of acreage and they're going to sell it for 15 million or whatever in housing developments. That kind of sprawl is concerning to me. And I don't know if that's hunting and fishing's problem to solve. I kind of feel like it's humanity's. And I guess to directly answer your question, fishing, I do feel like is in better hands, especially last year. I've seen everything from like 10 to 20 million new anglers last year, the people that started fishing for the first time, which is awesome. If you're on social media at all or the news, you probably saw like NBA players catching fish, right? Like what else are you going to do? You couldn't be inside around anybody, and it's the only safe place you could go. That's really inspiring to me. I get excited to see new types of people fishing, to see like it's not just, I think making that truly inclusive is great. On the hunting side, we grew last year. I really worry that is with the comeback of traveling sports leagues and all the crap that kids do in school these days. I just, you're never going to have time for hunting and fishing when your kid plays like two different double headers for two different sports 2 days a week and they have practice every night. It's like all that's what we're really competing with. People on podcasts like to make it out like it's all the anti-hunters and it's all these animal rights act, hey man, yeah, I'm a Sportsmen's Alliance member for a reason, because I feel like they are really fighting the fight on the law side. But for the most part, man, like if our numbers were just better, we would have more funding, we would have more participation, we would have more people buying equipment, we'd have more federal funding, which then comes back in through the Pittman Robertson and the Dingle Johnson. All that's cyclical, right? Like if people are participating, that's going to lift the funding. But I do worry about hunting and fishing. I think we'll see a dip again. I hope not. I hope we can keep at least 50% of the people we gained last year. But, the Eastern states are not doing as well as the Western in that regard. There's a lot more interest in the adventure hunting than there is in the East side. With that said, that's growth wise. That's growth wise. So
Sure.
you see growth in those license sales. With that said, man, like 93% of people that hunt whitetail hunt. So it's like that's where it is. It's that and waterfowl, and then you got like a collection of elk hunt and stuff too. But yeah, man, I don't know. I would say I didn't give you the most positive answer there, but I mean, and maybe I overanalyze this stuff, but I don't think so.
No, I think your analysis is pretty close. And it's, as far as new growth in the East versus the West, think about it. Western hunting in the mountains, it's very romantic. It's very like everyone thinks that they're just going to come out here and they're going to be in like this wild game mecca where there's just deer and antelope everywhere. And while there are a lot, the hunting is very hard. It's tough.
Yeah. I think it's exciting. It's adventurous. There is this feeling of getting closer to God. It's like, this is the most raw I can be as a human, and I'm challenging myself. And there's a lot appealing about that. That's why I want to do it sometime. But at the end of the day, I think we all need to realize and get off our high horses here. And a dude that goes out and whitetail hunts 2 days a year still bought a license, still contributed. He probably still bought too much ammo. He probably went out and shot a bunch, is still contributing. Like, we got to not have all the infighting and everything we've had in years past. I feel like there's been a little bit of unity. I haven't seen as much of that, and which very well could be that I just like hate Instagram and Facebook, and I don't have a Facebook account for a reason. I think I'm coming up on 4 years of not having one. Never regretted it. Literally the most toxic place. And I think so maybe those infighting, like maybe people are still arguing over crossbow versus compound. I don't know. I don't really care. Like, I don't want to be a part of that. But the sooner we can all realize that, like, hey, we're in this together, we have bigger fish to fry than what if you should be using mechanical broadheads or not. It's like you do you, man. Like, we're all in this together, trying to get more people into hunting, because if we don't, and here's actually, this is the part I meant to tie into your answer. From the activity side, my greatest concern is that politically we get overcome. Does not take much. I mean, how many examples do we need? There's a federal case right now that would keep you from being able to transport an animal across state lines. There's a case in Oregon that's extremely anti-hunting. Like, literally go to Sportsman's Alliance website and look at all of the cases those guys are fighting. And in my opinion, if you're not a Sportsman's Alliance member, like, dollar for dollar, that's one of the best groups you can put money into, because their funding is going hard at the legislation. They're the ones are fighting places like New Jersey, which decided this year, you know what, we're just not going to pass a budget, and now you guys can't have a bear season because we found this loophole, right? They're the ones fighting things like that. And, there's plenty of groups. If you are a super hardcore duck hunter, obviously Ducks Unlimited is aligned with you. Same for National Wild Turkey Federation and so on. There's a lot of great nonprofits that will handle habitat management and legislation for you. But I'm a big fan of Sportsman's Alliance, because that's probably my greatest fear behind the habitat itself. And how we seem to be experts at just completely destroying it forever. My greatest fear is just that we lose participation and therefore voters, and it just kind of gets illegal one cut at a time.
It's tough, but you're fighting the good fight. I mean, not only are you doing the GoWild app, you also mentioned you've got another, like you said, you do 4 podcasts.
I do 4 a month. Generally, it's me. I was doing 6. We had Restless Native, and we actually just stopped doing that podcast to go all in on more content on other places. So my other show is Gearbox Talk. It's doing really well. We've had people like Tim Kennedy on there, Jack Carr, the sniper and author, has been on there. Clay Newcomb, who just joined Meat Eater and has blown up recently. He was on Joe Rogan right after we had him on. We've got a lot of really interesting guests on Gearbox Talk. And that show, every week, I sit down, I have a rapid fire conversation with somebody about what they're using or what's in their gearbox, So we're talking to anglers. I've talked to survivalists. I talked to Laura Zara from Naked and Afraid. There's all kinds of really interesting guests on that show. You can find it on YouTube. They're quick. They're like, the shortest I've done is like 8 minutes long, and the longest one was an hour. We generally focus on like 15 to 20 minutes. They're super fun. But we do 4 of those. It releases every Wednesday night. And it's a video podcast. You can watch it on YouTube.
As far as new gear, we'll talk about hunting gear. Is there something in particular that you've seen or have or heard about that is really exciting to you?
Yeah. So the coolest thing that I have physically held and played with recently is the Garmin Zero crossbow scope. It's got a 3.5 times magnification. It can range game out to 250 yards. That does not mean they're encouraging you to shoot game that far, but sometimes a deer walks in, you want to know how far it is. It can range an animal out that far. That it syncs up to, if you're listening and not watching, I have a Garmin watch on. It will sync up to my watch. And so this thing's got, all this technology in it to know the angle it's shooting. It knows how far you're shooting because it's a rangefinder built into the scope. And it will tell you where your arrow landed. So if you shoot a 50-yard shot with your crossbow and it's in weeds, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, I thought I knew where that landed, but I don't. I've seen this happen numerous times with a bow. And you get there and you can't find that blood trail. I mean, I have this happen like with a gun every now and then. If you shoot an animal and then you like wait and then run down and all of a sudden it's like all this looks the same. With this thing, it'll tell you exactly where to start the blood trail with your watch. It syncs up to your watch. It's an incredible piece of technology. It's also controversial. Like, some people love to bash these things. There's one for the compound bow too. I'm actually we're going to make a demonstration video next week on how quick you can set one of these up, because we sell these things through GoWild. They're a popular item. They're growing in popularity of people kind of being interested in checking it out. But we're gonna the thing I think people misunderstand. Garmin did not make you cheat. Like, you can't fake the shot, right? Like, that's the part people are misunderstanding. All these things do is they keep the animal at ease for longer. Because if I'm doing this motion of pulling a rangefinder up to my eye and now I'm having to draw, I'm adding steps, I'm adding risk, right? Like, many times I've gotten busted on the ranging of a coyote or something from my stand. And this eliminates that motion. And the cool thing is, you don't actually have to go into a draw to be able to range. So you can actually see through the reticle or look through the scope, and you can see your reticle without having to pull full draw on the compound, or with the crossbow, you can just see it. These things are super cool, man. I mean, they are a little pricey. Garmin products are quality. So, the scope I think is $1,800 for the crossbow. But I tell you what, we did a product demo that we haven't released yet. This is coming soon. So if you want to see this, we put this thing to extremes that it has never been tested before, and we're blown away at how tough the crossbow scope is. That's all I can say. That's all I can say. Follow us on YouTube to figure out what we did to it. But like, my friends at Garmin were like, "You did what?" So follow GoWild to be able to figure out what we did with this thing. But they're just super tough and super resistant. The compound bow scopes are more affordable. They're more in an affordable price range. It's still like, I want to say they're $700 or something. But again, it can range without having to draw. All the same benefits I was talking about, where it syncs up to your watch and all that cool stuff. But I have not seen anything that cool. And I went to the last SHOT Show in ATA in 2020, before COVID hit. I was there and did not see anything cooler than that. So that's my favorite thing that I've seen in the last 18 months.
It's easy to bash on something like that. But in my mind, when you get a piece of technology like that can make you a better hunter and take out some of the miscalculations we can make, human error, it's going to, in the long run, it makes us more ethical hunters. And our goal is to dispatch that animal as quickly and cleanly as possible.
That's all this is helping with. And it's not helping you with target panic. It's not helping you with your strength. It's not helping you. All of the tenets of good archery still have to be there for you. You still have to practice. This isn't like you just show up and do it. People act like that thing puts a GPS collar on your buck and it tells you where to go hunt. Like, for how stupid some of the arguments are against it, people have just not thought through. It's like, oh, you're using a single pin. Guess what? This operates just like a single pin. A single pin, you're dialing into 33 yards. You're not guessing at 3 yards past 30 pin, right? Like it is the same thing. It's just combined into a more efficient way to keep animals from getting spooked, man. And at the end of the day, I don't want to wound an animal. I don't want you doing that either. So I don't understand all the opposition to it. It's, I think, mostly misunderstanding.
Yeah. Hopefully a place like GoWild can help people dispatch some of those misconceptions. Brad, I've got to go pick up some kids from school here soon. It's been a pleasure talking to you. You're obviously a super knowledgeable guy and you care about the outdoors. Go ahead and plug GoWild one more time, where we can find all your stuff and your videos and the app and all that.
Yeah, so you can visit downloadgowild.com. That's going to take you to a screen that says Apple or Android. You can tap whatever you want. You can also just search for us in your app store. It's GoWild, one word. When you download the app, you'll get an automated message from me once you create an account. That'll come in like 24 hours or so. The first one's automated. The reply, if you respond back, is not. That's really me. I see all the replies that come back to me. I love to hear what podcast people come from. I love to just, if you got questions, that's really me going to sit there and bang out the answers and tell you how to do whatever. So, we've got, I asked you earlier today when this was going to be released. It's because I was not sure if it synced up. I was going to tell everybody something that's really exciting, but now we got to wait because it's going to be about 3 weeks before this big thing hits. So the thing I'll tell you is there's a lot of incentive to join GoWild now and start building up some points for this fall.
Okay, I like that little teaser. That's fun.
So Brad, join us there. I'd love to chat with you guys. Thanks for joining in with me and Zach today. I appreciate it too. Sorry, go ahead. You're about to say something.
I was saying, if there's any other like little closing comments, things you'd like to say, fire it up.
Yeah, Gearbox Talk too. I mean, I think if people are tuning into this, they'd probably really like that show. I really have a good time doing it. We have one of the longest distance sniper successful shot holders from Iraq is coming on there in a few weeks, and he's going to talk through his truck setup that he drives all around the country. I've talked to all kinds of James Nash and I talked about broadheads. James is a 2-time Purple Heart recipient and one of the most knowledgeable outdoor guides I've ever met. And he and I talked for an hour on best broadheads. I mean, and all the mechanics and the physics. And there's something for everybody in that show. So I really would plug that show. I hope you guys will check that out on YouTube. I hope you'll download GoWild and check it out. And, just let me know where you came from when you join.
Sounds great, man. Brad, appreciate it. Have a good day.
Yeah, thanks, Zach. You too.